myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the...
Good evening and welcome to NUFC Matters. It's Wednesday night, so it's retro night, and as always I'm joined by George, by Neil, by Steve, by Stu and Steve to talk about days gone by, and we're looking at Coventry City tonight, and Paul Oxley stole me thunder in the chat a little bit with his comment straight away. Happy St Patrick's Day, of course, and a special shout out to Shay Given, the only Irishman who doesn't know where Dublin is, which of course ties in, I'm sure, with one of the stories that one of the panel's probably going to tell. We'll touch on that probably later, but yeah, Coventry. Difficult one, this. I know the lads have been scratching their heads for stories. I certainly took my time looking for celebrities and looking for people who played for Newcastle and Coventry, but I did manage to find some, see if I can catch the lads out a little bit later. And as always, we start with the lads' memories. We are going to go with Birmingham next week. Tom Lynch has asked if we can look at European matches. We're going to do that in the summer, Tom. We want to get through as many teams as we can between now and the end of the season. And then obviously we're going to maybe touch on the European games during the summer. We're going to have plenty of time to fill. There's going to be a larger gap between this season and next season. So, you know, we might be doing a few specials and getting a few other bits and bobs out there during the summer as everybody gets vaccinated. So, plenty to do, plenty to catch up with on all the playlists. But we will be putting stuff out once the season ends. So good evening, George. Over to you for your first story about Coventry.
Thanks, Steve. First one is not my first experience of Coventry, but a match I remember well because I was there. And also, there's a little personal side to it as well, which I'll talk about as we go through. Wednesday, the 17th of February, 1999, and we beat Coventry 4-1. And the reason I picked it was a superb game of football. Coventry were playing quite well at the time. I mean, their team included people like George Boateng, Gary McAllister, Whelan. The manager was Strachan. And, of course, out on the wing, they had a return for us for Darren Huckabee. So there was a personal connection. And our team was Given, Dormy, Howie, Dabazas, Glass, Solano, Speed, Haman, Saha, and Shearer. The reason I picked it was I think that was one of the first games that our manager, Roeder, came out with the phrase sexy football. And that really was a good game. It was, if it was sexy football or not, I don't know, but it was great to enjoy. And Shearer got 2 goals, two crackers, two snorters. Gary Speed, a 30-yarder from just outside the penalty area. And then Saha, of course, with a nice delicate dribble and a slot in at the near post, as he was able to do. And it just was a joy to see a Newcastle team playing like that. And a crowd of 36,300, which isn't bad for Coventry, in my opinion. And again, a Wednesday night, Noel Whelan scored the Coventry goal, and it was a typical Noel Whelan goal. He bundled the ball in the net rather than hit it into the net, which was a bit of his style. But nonetheless, he was a goal scorer and a hard-working player for Coventry. The other personal bit was that on the Coventry dugout that night, the physiotherapist was a young man called George Dalton. Now, George Dalton made his name at Newcastle as a young fullback, and I played in the Northumberland boys with George and in the juniors and the ends with George until he got a professional contract, of course, and our ways separated. George was heading for an England place as a fullback, in my opinion, and the opinion of many better critics than me at the time. And he got a knee injury. And it's funny how Steve was on it the other week about Tony Green's knee injury and other knee injuries that people at Newcastle never seem to recover from. Well, George Dalton was one of those. He got a knee injury, came back, but he was never the same. He was always a yard off the pace. And I often wonder if in fact, more so now that I saw Steve talked about Tony Green last week, was there something in the background at Newcastle where we just couldn't cope with these things because we lost so many good players with injuries that other people seem to get rid of at other clubs quite straightforwardly. Well, George didn't get rid of his, and he ended up going to Brighton and played there for a while. And eventually, the knee injury caught up with him again, and he became Brighton let him do his coaching badges. But he also took at the university down there a physiotherapist course, and he became a physio. And the first big job he had was at Coventry. He was at Coventry, and he did their 88, 89 cup final, which cup final was. He was the physio then, and he was the physio for about 20 years. Lovely lad, George, he was. And actually, he'll reappear again next week if we're doing Birmingham, because for a short while he was assistant manager in Birmingham. But never mind. That was the other personal thing about that match, which was important for me. But the big thing was, I'm sure Ruud Gullit did refer to the game as one where his sexy football appeared, and it really was good to see. And we did give them a football lesson, even though Coventry were playing well at the time. So that's my first memory, lads.
Great stuff. And how's your recovery going, George? Are you getting better? Yes,
that's stronger by the day, Steve, and really grateful for all the good wishes. But every now and again, if I think I'm too clever, it reminds us and it sits us down, and I'm starting to breathe heavy again. So but day by day, I'm getting stronger. I've been out in the car a bit today, and that was good. That's given us a bit more confidence. Took her to get serviced yesterday, and that was again was quite good. Actually, I took a pile of newspapers into Richard Hardy's with us to get the car serviced, because they said if I waited, they would give us the car back while I waited. So I sat with about 10 papers, the Sudokus and crosswords, while I was waiting for my car getting done. But it was good, and it's done, and I felt as though I'd achieved something. So the short answer is getting better, Steve, getting better day by day.
Great stuff. Steve Wilkinson, good evening, mate.
Good evening. All right. Can I just briefly mention another game before I go on to the game I mentioned, just triggered by what George said. He was talking about Tony Green and a game I was going to do, but it's not the one. But I just want to recall for the older people a goal that was actually an own goal scored by Jeff Blockley from one of the most fantastic crosses I've ever seen anybody put in from Tony Green, and it was in 1971 in the Texaco Cup. Which we were great at. It was the sort of upmarket Papa John Trophy type of competition, which we actually won twice. But it started as being Scottish teams, English teams, and I think we played more English teams in it than anything else. But we beat Coventry 5-1 in a second leg at that time, and because it was 2-leg games. And I remember the other day this cross coming in from Tony Green just outside the penalty area from the Popular side. And Jeff Blockley was the centre-half for Coventry, and he just couldn't do anything other than head it in the net. It was the most fantastic cross. And like George says, Tony Green was sadly missed, because he would have gone on to be a great player. But the game I wanted to talk about particularly was again with a personal story attached. I lived in Nuneaton for 8 years between 1987 and 1995. And Coventry was the local team, and I occasionally went to see their own games, but nothing like travelling up here, which I did a lot of the time in the early times of Keegan. But on that particular game, it's the game in 1980, where we are on 1989 February. I actually went to the game with Coventry fans. Now, I think Mitch talked, I think it was the other week, about the danger of being in the opposition end, how we've got to behave yourself. And this particular game, didn't lend itself to that, because the way the game panned out, I was behind the stand in the seats behind the goal that we were attacking in the first half, and there was 0-0 half time. And shortly after half time, there was a back pass and by Coventry at the other end of the pitch, and John Henry snipped in front of the goalie. John Henry, who actually played for Coventry as well, so he'd be on the list later on for possibly in some people's teams. He nipped in, gave us the lead, and then a few minutes later, it was only a couple of minutes later, at the end where I was, we conceded an equaliser, which was an own goal by Frank Pingle, a name from the past that we all treasure in our memories of the fantastic player. So there it was, ones each. And then about a quarter of an hour later, up the other end, a cross came in. And of all people, Brian Kilcline handled the ball and they get a penalty. Now, you know what you do if you're a Newcastle fan, you get a penalty. You leap out your seat. Now, you don't do that in the middle of a seat full of Coventry fans. And the worst, obviously, thing, there's a follow-up. And they know who you are. Because I couldn't hold myself back and leaping up for this penalty, and there was no other Newcastle fans in that end, so everybody's looking at you. You say, I hope this goes in because I'm going to take some bloody stick if it doesn't go in. Thankfully, Mirandina banged it in the net, and again I leaped up, and then I'm still getting the jip off the Coventry fans that were there in a light-hearted way. It wasn't one of the troublemaker stands. It was a nice one, but it was the danger of getting sort of two incidents on that moment. So we went on to win the game 2-1, and that was a nice drive home with the Coventry fans, giving them some stick for the night that when we beat them that game. So that's my first game.
Good stuff. Okay, whose phone is that? Is that Steve's?
That's mine. I'll get it.
Go on, George. I'll put you on mute, George. I'll put you on mute. There we go. That's George on mute. Steve.
Oh, should put his telephone voice on. Hello.
Hello. Yeah, we should have listened in, shouldn't we? Steve Hasty. Good evening, mate.
Evening, lads. Evening. You know what? Coventry, strange team. As a kid, they meant absolutely nothing to us. And I think that's because they were basically a third division team. But it's a club that's always been synonymous with Jimmy Hill, hasn't it? And I thought, rather than just sort of go delving straight into a game, I had a look at Jimmy Hill and a look at his career. And obviously, Jimmy Hill was in charge of the PFA. It was Jimmy Hill that introduced destroyed the maximum wage, which was 20 quid at the time in the early 60s, when he was the chairman of the PFA and took the Football Association, Football League to task. But he was also quite an innovative guy. I mean, it was him. He introduced the football panels that we see now that we just take for granted. You know, when you're watching Match of the Day or you're watching any live football and you've got a panel there, he introduced that to TV. You know, so that he also introduced 3 points for a win. It was his idea that we should have 3 points for a win. So you're talking about quite a revolutionary guy in football terms. And he took over Coventry City, and as I say, it was a club that meant absolutely nothing to us. They were just there. They were a third division club, but within 6 years, he managed to move Coventry from the lower reaches of the third division into what was at the time the first division. And some of the revolutionary things he did at the football club, which now again people would take for granted, he changed their strips. He basically looked and decided that they would change their nickname. You know,
he wrote this club song as well, didn't he?
He wrote the club song. He brought in their own radio station. They were the first club to have a colour programme, which they then won the programme of the year about 4 or 5 years in a row. He brought in, what else? Their own train to travel on. So you went to away games in your own Coventry City train. It was the first all-seater stadium, in the country. Before the Hillsborough came in, with the rules on all-seater. So he was quite a revolutionary guy. But the reason I'm talking about him is because my first game doesn't involve Newcastle at all. And I think some of the lads are going to realise what I'm talking about. Jimmy Hill was famous for putting Sunderland down. His team, Coventry, had to play Bristol City in May 1977. And it was a midweek game. It was a Thursday, I think it was. It was a midweek game, and Sunderland had to go to Everton. And it was in those days, it was always a 7:30 kickoff. And Jimmy Hill said that there was too many people trying to get into Highfield Road, so he delayed the kickoff by 10 minutes. So Sunderland's game at Everton was already kicked off. Everybody just needed a draw. Sunderland needed a draw. Bristol City needed a draw, and Coventry, providing that the results went right, could get away with a draw. But primarily needed a win. They were winning 2-0, and Bristol brought it back to 2-2. At which point, the Sunderland result came over the tannoy. Jimmy Hill insisted on it being flashed up on their super-duper electronic scoreboard and announced over the tannoy that Sunderland had got beat, which meant the game was then basically finished. There was nothing had happened. So for the last 5 minutes, Bristol City played out the game among themselves, and not a single Coventry player touched the ball during the last 5 minutes of the game. As the two of them played out a 2-2 draw, both of them stayed in the first division, and Sunderland went down. And I just remember the furore afterwards, the bother. So the FA and the Football League and their own, we decided to take him to court, and he was found guilty in a tribunal of basically bringing the game into disrepute. And they slapped his wrists and left his team up, and Sunderland still went down. So he won anyway. But for me, like, it was just one of those things, because they were not a football club. Until then, it meant very, very little for us. And then after that, it was a club whose results I always watched, because I had this affinity with put Sunderland down, you know. And it's just that just always fascinated me. And I think they got done over again. I think Sunderland got done over again by Coventry at a later stage, probably in similar circumstances than the particular people involved. But that May 77 game is the game that I just remember specifically for Coventry. And when that result came over on the TV and found out what they'd done, it was good enough for the fact that it was a 2-2 draw and Sunderland went down. But then to find out how it happened was just like the icing on the massively big proverbial cake.
Yeah, Train Sun says Bristol City manager was Alan Dix, of course, who used to be one of Jimmy Hill's players for Coventry.
Right, yes. Yeah.
Alan Thompson says, can we delay the Fulham game by 2 months, Steve, so we can still say we're in the Premier League for next season? Mark Corby says, great story that, Steve. He says it happened again in 1997, Coventry's game at Spurs.
There you go, that did happen again.
He says the 1-2-1 and the Mackems went down 1-0 at Wimbledon. So,
it did, yeah. Yeah.
Hill and Dave Harrison says Jimmy Hill and Shola, Mackem Slayers. Great story. 3 cheers for Jimmy. Stu, how are you doing, mate? You okay? You've been to the gym?
Yeah, good. Have I?
Was it shut?
Very good. The record show, another comedy show.
Well, I started on your hair when you weren't on the show. I thought I better have a go when you're here in case you think I'm a coward.
Well, that's the first thing I want to talk about, is to quash those scandalous rumours I went to Turkey to get. What did you call them? Seeds or plants or something?
Crash seed?
Crash seed.
Seed.
I've shaved it off. I've shaved the hair off now. And well, I sent you a picture, didn't I? And that's just like, if I was going to get seeds in me, I wouldn't get grey ones, would I?
Brilliant.
Right, the first game I picked was probably on the theme of what we've been talking about in the last couple of weeks, unfortunately, the passing of Glenn Roeder. And it was the 1987-88 season. And I remember that season fondly, because that was the first season I was allowed to go to the games by myself, providing I paid for the games by myself. And it was only £2 in, or if you jumped in, as some of us used to do occasionally, or 2 through the turnstiles, it was cheaper. So I looked through and checked the game, and it finished 2-2. Now, someone who I'll never remember, even if you tell us his name, scored the first goal for them. But what I remember about that game is Michael O'Neill, who, once again, the next George Best sighting from Northern Ireland that we had, who started this season pretty well. He scored 2 in that game, but both of them were practically identical. The first one, which was the equaliser, was Sarge Paul Goddard, found space on the right-hand side, crossed the ball. Steve, are you looking for my hair photo?
I am. I think it's grown.
Aye, it was since last week. I shaved up this Saturday in disgust. But Sarge crossed the ball, and Michael O'Neill nipped in and then knocked the ball in from about 6 yards. Now, the second goal, the reason I mentioned Glenn Roeder is we're all pretty familiar. All the people who used to go at the games at that stage with his foragers forward from the centre half with the Roeder shuffle and then move the ball into centre midfield and sometimes give and take or just spray it out. But for some reason, Glenn Roeder was found in the right wing position, and it's very rare you would forage in that area. But then he put the ball in, and I think at the time, everyone in the crowd, and it wasn't a big crowd, it was probably about 17 or 18,000, which was standard for about them. The cross come in, and there was the goalkeeper, 2 defenders, and Michael O'Neill. And I think everyone was in shock that Roeder was there and crossed this ball from, he had acres of space as well, to be fair. And it was like, this was a comedy sketch, bro, like, after you. And our boy Mickey O'Neill just bombed it in straight into the net, so we're 2-1 up. And then there's something that we have a bit banter on Twitter about today. This guy called David Speedy scored late. Now, he didn't score as often as his wife, as rumours has it, but he scored late on, but it was a thunderous shot late in the game to make it 2-2. So that was my first recollection of being at a match with Coventry. So and that's the one I want to talk about, especially when we've been talking about Glenn Roeder of late as well.
Yeah, great stuff, mate. Great stuff. Mitch, your first story, mate?
Well, I'll keep the Roeder one going. I know I told this the other day when we were talking about Glenn Roeder and that 3-2 win when he did his Roeder shuffle, and my memory did recall properly that he sat Alan Brazil on his big fat ass with a Roeder shuffle, and that the whole crowd loved it. And that game actually really special for a number of reasons. You know, we talked about it briefly. Joe Allen getting his first goal. You know, Joe Allen. I wish we'd seen a little bit more of him. I wish we'd had a little bit more out of him, because he went on and had a great career. But I think he would love to have in his career more at Newcastle United. And you know, like Gaza before him, going his separate ways and going to different clubs. For us being a club, putting out that, you know, that Youth Cup team that won the Youth Cup in '84, we produced so much talent in that team. And yet, if you imagine sprinkling some more of that around the dressing room with the influence of somebody like Glenn Roeder to keep them on a steady path and be their captain and their leader, you just think, well, where could that have gone in the right hands with the right manager? But that wasn't us at the time. We were a selling club. We were always going to move people on, and I guess that's what we had to put up with. But that game especially, because Coventry, remember, at that time, you know, they were still seen as quite an up-and-coming club in the game. They were signing people like Alan Brazil from Man United. They'd signed Pickering from Sunderland. They were picking players from other clubs. They were a club that suddenly people wanted to play for. And they had quite a decent squad. That Cyril Regis in that squad as well. He got one of the goals against with that day. And this is the mystery with Coventry. You know, the up and down and up and down and up and down. They're a club who suffered at the hands of bad ownership. I know that's something me and Steve bang on about repeatedly every week. But they're one of the prime examples. You know, they lost their ground. They were nomads for a while. There were no home ground. They've got an owner now who openly says they don't want to own them. Even now, it's an absolute shambles. And I think a club like that kind of deserves better. Every club deserves better. But, you know, them in particular. But that game, that 3-2 in February of '86, Joe Allen's first goal, and the last 70 minutes was the Glenn Roeder show. And that's why we'll love him to bits. You know, he just held everything together to let us see the game out after we got it back to 3-2, and then that was it. We were never going to lose it. And a fantastic day and a fantastic game.
Yep, great stuff. Great memories. Big shout out to our sponsor, Spider VPN. They were with us last month and back again this month. They're one of our main sponsors. Big shout out to those guys. Big shout out to Geordie Riffs, premium guitar lessons for beginners and children, guitar repairs and service and recording studio. www.geordieriffs.co.uk is their website. At Geordie Riff Official on Facebook. But Instagram's where they want the followers, so find them on there if you're on that app. At Geordie Riffs. And you can also give a big shout out to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend in Newcastle, and to Jab Signature, who produce our flyers and our posters. If you miss any of the shows, you can find us on your podcast providers, iTunes and Spotify. Just search up NUFC Matters. And if you're a first-time visitor to the channel, then please subscribe. Hit that little badge, Newcastle Legends, down in the bottom right-hand corner, and just subscribe. It is free. Hit the like button, that's the little thumb, and give it a share as well. And if you've got something to say, drop a message into the comments. They are a friendly bunch in there. Back to you then, George. I'll unmute you now that your phone conversation stopped. I didn't want to listen in. Yeah, the lads were telling us we should listen in, George. I didn't want to do it.
Well, maybe. Actually, Neil will understand why I didn't come back straight away, because it was a lady called Isabel Davis who's
oh, right.
Family I've known for 60 years plus, and so I couldn't put the phone down and say, sorry, I'm on the retro, I'm going to leave you. It's just too important for that. Anyway, back to the story. Anyway, she's fine, and she's glad to hear I'm fine. So the next one is the 14th of April, a Tuesday night match, which was unusual in those days, in 79, and we beat Coventry 4-0. And why that one? Well, it was one of the last Joe Harvey games that I saw where we actually took a team to pieces, and it happened to be Coventry's turn to get it. And when I read out the team, McFall, Craig, Guthrie, Gibb, Monker, Burton, Dyson, Robson, Pop Robson, Wayne Davis, Jimmy Smith, and Alan Foggen. And when I look at the ball players and the so-called box-to-box midfielders in that team, and I look at the current 11, and I think, good God, what are we watching now compared to what that was? I mean, there was forward line from one side, from Dyson to Foggen, were all stars in their own right, and some of them just up and coming. And 4 goals. Foggen scored the first one. Young Dyson the second. Pop Robson scored with customary blaster, and then Tommy Gibb with his slide rule accuracy from about 30 yards guided the ball into the bottom right hand corner rather than blast it in, and it was a joy to see. Noel Cantor was their manager, but they just weren't in the game, and as I say, it was one of the last Joe Harvey games that I saw that I felt we really took a team apart, and it was a joy to watch. And so young players up and coming, like Dyson and Pop Robson was on his way, and others like Wyn Davis, who'd been around a while, and another one, young Alan Foggen. Now you just been talking about if Glenn Roeder had been around to marshal those youngsters from the youth cup team. There's Alan Foggen. If somebody had just got hold of him at the right time and guided him in the right direction, he could have had a fantastic career. But it sadly, like so many from Tyneside, he didn't get that opportunity, and just went off the rails occasionally, well, more than occasionally, wherever he was. But the promise that lad had, with the guidance of somebody like Roeder, to put the hand on his shoulder, he might well have turned out to be a superstar. And given us the benefit of that, but we didn't. But 4-0 on a Tuesday night, and we annihilated Coventry, and it was one of the nicest games I've seen towards the end of Joe Harvey's tenure, with some real skill from those players I've just mentioned.
Great stuff, George. Fantastic. Steve Wilkinson, your next story.
Yeah, well, George has done 2 games tonight, both where we've won 4-0, 4-1, and it's a fact about the games against Coventry with there's very high scores, and I sort of totted up, and we've played them about 60 times in the time that I've been following them. 1964 was the first time. I think they were probably 3rd division, as Steve said earlier on about before that. And 25% of those games we've scored 4 or 5. It's quite incredible. And for my second game, I'm going to pick one of those 4-0s, which was the game in February 94, in which Andy Cole got a hat-trick. Now, it was, as I say, that time I was still living down Coventry, but because it was the sort of Keegan great year, we just got promoted the year before, I came up to nearly all the games with the Midland supporters. And although that was a Wednesday night, and it probably came up by the car, I can't remember who, but we used to get a bus up on a Saturday for the home games, picking people up en route. But on midweek games, whichever direction we went, either home games or away, various people came up in the car. So I came up in the car. It was a terrible day for weather. It was bad snow. I was in two minds whether to come up, but you know, you have to come, and you're playing the team where you live. So I came up and drove up, and it was a quagmire of a pitch. It was, and there was little bits of snow around the side of the pitch. I don't know how bad it had been during the day, but got there, got into the match, and it was actually 0-0 at half time. Even though we'd had chances to score in the first half, I think we'd had a goal disallowed. But soon after the break, Andy Cole broke the deadlock. It was a back pass to a header that didn't quite rate, and he bombed into the box, lobbed it over the goalie, and then she tapped it in from about an inch. And then followed a little while later with a second goal, which was laid on by Peter Beardsley doing one of his fantastic dribbles into the box from the edge of the box. I think Robbie Elliott had pulled it back from the byline to Beardsley, who did one of his jinks and just laid it in the path of Andy Cole, who tapped it in the net. And then a little bit later on, there was a long shot from Rule Fox, 25 yard out. He picked up the ball again from a fantastic pass. No, I think it was a mistake pass actually. Coventry gave it to him, and he picked it up in the circle, ran forward, got about 25 yards out. Shot. We don't do that sort of thing these days very often, do we? Shoot from 25 yards. Grivovich was in goal. He only parried it, and Andy Cole came in and tapped it in the net. So he got a hat trick in about 20 minutes in total. And then we got a fourth goal scored by Alex Matthew, who was a lad we'd got from Scotland, not particularly prolific, but he scored about 5 goals in the time he was there. But he was sort of understudy to Andy Cole. Came on a sub quite a few times. But he came on, and again it was Peter Beardsley who laid it on a plate with him, and he ran through and slotted it in. So it was 4-0. So there we are, 10 o'clock at night. I've got to drive back to Coventry, but it was a much happier drive back to Coventry than it was for the Coventry fans who come up. There was a busload of them. We're all parallel with them most of the way down the M1 and the M69. Got home about 2 o'clock in the morning, but it was certainly a joyous visit for me, and seeing 4 goals and Andy Cole hat trick and another fantastic performance of Peter Beardsley.
Fantastic.
That's my second game.
Yeah, brilliant. Steve Hasty, your next memory.
Next memory takes us not that far back, actually, 2009, December 2009. But just to paint the picture, obviously, and we all remember it, I know, we'd been relegated that season, the previous season in May. We started the season off. We didn't have Shearer. Shearer was probably still sitting, waiting by the telephone, waiting for the phone call from Mike Ashley, which didn't come. So Bobby had passed away in the July. So that was another cloud that was hanging over the club, another sad sort of time. And then we kicked off the season without a manager. You know, we just said, the club just basically turned around to Chris Hughton and said, "You look after it. We haven't decided what we're going to do yet." And you look at the squad that he had, or you look at what he lost. You know, I mean, he lost Obafemi Martins, he lost Bassong, he lost Bay, Edgar, Duff, Owen, Viduka, Lovenkrantz, and then they weren't even going to let him bring anybody in because he was just a caretaker. But he managed to persuade the club to let him have get Danny Simpson on loan. I think they got Pankrat, not that he sort of pulled up any tree by any means. Marlon Harewood and Kishnashvili came in as well.
Bless you.
We're hard enough for us to say, never mind sneeze, I tell you. But we started the season really well, and by the time we went to Coventry in the December, we'd had 6 straight wins off the belt, and I think we got those 6 straight wins just after in the October that Ashley decided that nobody was going to come in and be manager, so I'll just let Hughton have it. I'll just make him permanent manager. And like I say, we went on this great run. We beat Coventry 2-0 in the December. Goals by Shola just on the stroke of half time. And then 10 minutes from the end, Niall Ranger pops up with a goal, which he came on as sub. He came out by Harewood at the same time. But again, a footballer, a player that could have offered so much to the game, but they completely and utterly lost his way without anybody helping him, to be perfectly honest. Nobody helped him to lose his way. He just seemed to have this sort of inbuilt ability to basically destroy his own career without the help of anyone else. But that game put us 7 points clear in the championship, and to me, it was games like that then persuaded Ashley to go out and in the January and get the likes of Kevin Nolan into the team, because he suddenly realised, you know what, we're 7 points clear. This guy could actually take we're up again. And again, this is the gambling sort of way that Ashley, sort of has ran the club over the years, and we're seeing it yet again now. But that particular game for me, it was the fact that we're on a run, and I think it's because we've been on the defeatist run that when I look back and think of, would we ever see in the current climate, will we see Newcastle United go on a run of seven straight wins? Chris Hughton managed it, but I doubt very much that we've got a manager who's never ever, from all intents and purposes, for everything I know, has never actually in the Premiership, in the Premier top divisions, had a run of 3 straight wins. In his entire career, he's never had a one where he's won 3 straight wins. Now, I might be wrong on that, but and I'm sure somebody would tell us if they have. But I think he might have had 2 wins and a draw, 2 wins and a draw, whatever. But or 2 wins and defeat. But that was Chris Hughton just getting the job out of nowhere because of the situation that happened, but managed to get 7 straight wins and put us in a very, very good position coming up to Christmas. And it was Coventry, so that's why I picked it. It was simple as that. I mean, you look at the team, Steve. Harper in goal, Colaccini, Enrique, Danny Simpson, Taylor, Gutierrez, Pancrat, Nicky Butt, Lovenkrantz. I think we had Alan Smith, Shola Amiobi, players there. Tim Krul on the bench, Kishnashvili on the bench, young Kedar on the bench. Whatever happened to him? Another name, another one that
Thomas Kedar,
but not Thomas Kedar. Exactly, Danny Guthrie. But it just shows you what a good manager Chris Hughton was, and he could knit a team together, putting performances in like he did, and. Maybe we need to, maybe Steve Bruce needs to take a look at that and go, you know what, I need to work with players, I need to work with them. But I know I'm bringing it into the modern day idiom, if you like. But it's that sort of yin and yang, isn't it? That chalk and cheese that we've got at the moment.
Yeah, Tom Dixon asking for a photo of the stadium. I mean, this is probably the one we remember more than most. Highfield.
Road,
with the old fences up. But they've had financial issues, Coventry, over the years, and had to ground share and stuff. So but that's the ground there, Tom.
They built a new stadium, Steve. They built the
Birmingham, aren't they? They play Birmingham.
A downfall.
They're playing at Birmingham.
St Andrews at the minute.
They're going back to the Rico Arena next season. They've just signed a 10-year lease to go back and play at what was their own ground. That they ended up selling the ground, and then I think they were at the time joint sharing it with the rugby club. Saracens moved out to London, and they joint shared it. And then there was a massive bust up with the particular company that owned the club, and basically threw them out. Sisu, I think, is the company, isn't it? Threw them out of their own
Swedish.
Absolute disaster. But at least there's some semblance of order coming back if they're going to be playing at the Rico Arena again for at least 10 years in a row, providing the contract stands up, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. Stu, your next story, mate?
Can you put that picture back on of Gaza and Joe Allen as well?
You have to give us time, mate, because I
Right, no
only got
problem.
a certain amount of photographs, mate.
The only reason was because I know that's when they won the Youth Cup in 1985. But if you look at if you can get it back on, the difference in sizes of the Blue Stars, and it's just typical in Newcastle at the time, talking about having to iron your own on. Like Gazza's was like the size of a pea, and Joellen's was like the normal size you'd be able to buy in the shops. But it just distracted us when it come on before.
Is it not a distance thing? I'll get it back on. I just think, is Gaza not just slightly further back? Hold on. Let's have
It looks like a lot smaller. Anyway, they'll talk
there you
about
go.
it again.
I'm not sure. I mean, I can see what you mean. Yeah, you might be right. It would be typical of Newcastle at the time, as you say.
We'll have to ask.
If you look at Joellen's, it goes onto the black bits on both sides, and Gaza stays in the white.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe Joe was a bigger star at the time.
Either that.
Hey.
Maybe
Hey.
Joe's man
That's what the right one. He's on a roll. Right, well, I've only been to Coventry once for an away game, and it was the 95-96 season. And the game was, we won 1-0. But it follows on from my very first retro show when we talked about Arsenal. And I took one of my friends, Frankie, with us for his first ever away game. And he loved it that much, he decided he wanted to go to the next game. And as it happens, the Arsenal was away on the Wednesday night and Coventry was away on the Sunday. There was a Sunday game. So we got the buses down there from the Eldon Square, the back of Eldon Square, we used to get the buses down. And he kept saying, he says, but you don't normally drink Coke, what are you doing? And he wasn't like au fait with away games. And I had like two 2-litre bottles of, well, he thought it was Coke. And he says, everyone's getting these, what's going on? So once he started tasting, like one was full of vodka, one was full of Bacardi. So I let him choose, being polite. And by the time we got down there, he must have, well, I won't embarrass him too much. But let's just say when we got off the bus, he had helicopter legs. It was like spaghetti legs or something. He just couldn't walk. And for those who had done the same bus trips to Coventry, there was a big roundabout where Steve Wilkinson, you might be able to help us here. There was a big roundabout where they used to park the buses near, and you had to walk to the ground.
Did they not park? There was like a ring road. Was it down by the ring road?
Yeah, like a ring road. Yeah, you come off there. But I wasn't sure about myself. So,
yeah, because it was the ground was just up from the ring road. But I think
it was in a housing estate, wasn't it?
Was it?
Like,
yeah, well, the ground, well, terraced houses and stuff where the ground was.
It reminded us of like Ayson Park or Filbert Street. It was that type of ground.
Mm-hmm.
Although there could have been dodgy places, Coventry was, to me, the people, I know a lot of people from Coventry, they're all friendly. But it could have been dodgy, but it wasn't. And it was just trying to... Frankie just wanted to say hello to everyone that walked past, and like the game I remember was just there was two songs constantly. It was like "We Are Top of the League" and the "Tune Black White Army" chants, and that just bounced around the ground for the full game. And even on the way back, like Frankie's like, I can't drink anymore. I can't. As soon as we got in the bus, he was asking people straight away. But I won't embarrass him for what he did. Let's just say he didn't reach the toilet in time. So that was the game I wanted to talk about. Oh, by the way, Steve Watson scored the winner. He got the freedom of the Cockney defence. Ginola, who had been set off in the previous game, had crossed the ball, and the defender made an absolute hash of it. And it was just like, thank you very much, we'll take that. And he slotted it in. It just seemed like, and the pitch was like, someone said earlier, it was like the sandpit. It was just clots, it was like a school football pitch, when you're younger. And it was just like one of those games that I used to play, but it was happy days. Obviously, it was a great time for us as well, wasn't it? So, looking back, I picked that game not because we won 4-0, 7-0, 10-0, or whatever. It was just like the memories of going down with Frankie, and I took him on the supporters bus. So it was a new experience for him. So that's why I chose that game.
Great stuff, mate. Neil, your final memory?
Mine kind of ties in with something Steve was talking about before. We had a run sort of around about 94, 95, 96, where we played Coventry something like 6 or 7 times, and I think the aggregate was 15-0 or 16-0. And I think the best result they had was a 0-0 draw. And it was one of the games in that run, and there's 2 reasons why I remember it. It's 24th of August 94, it's a midweek. It was our second game of the season. We played and won at Leicester at the weekend on the Saturday. It was the first game played with the newly opened Gallagher extension. So the crowd had gone up to over 35,000. It was a big atmosphere under lights, and Coventry arrived like lambs to the slaughter. I think Bob Lee got the first one. He slipped as he hit it, and it helped him put it in the bottom corner. Steve Watson, who obviously likes to score against Coventry, stuck an absolute screamer in from about 20 yards. I think Rob Lee got the second just before half time, and then in the second half, this is the goal I remember, and why I picked the game was Cole was put through from about 20-25 yards, and the ball just wouldn't stop bouncing. It was bobble, 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 and then eventually he got his toe onto the end of it and bang into the back of the net, 4-0, and we saw the game out beautifully. But that run of games, sort of 94, 95, 96, where I reckon Steve Igrizovic must be the goalkeeper who's picked the ball out the back of the net at St James's Park the most times of any Premiership keeper, because every time they came, we seemed to batter them in that little run, you know. It was 3-0, 4-0, 5-0, you know, it was a real load of hammers. And the only other reason I remember that game was I'd missed the Leicester game on the Saturday because I had tickets to go to see Slayer at the City Hall, and I was still deaf on the Wednesday. So I'm wandering around, yes, that's a great game, what a great goal. I couldn't hear a bloody thing. But that was that whole time of following were, you know, not just under Keegan, but for a little time after as well. Every time we played Coventry, we seemed to turn it on, and that was a special day because of the Gallagher opening as well, because it was the first time we'd been split up as a group by allocating tickets elsewhere for the building works. So it was the first time we were back together as well. And boy, was that a good feeling and a great way to start the season at home.
Great stuff, some great memories.
17-2 was the aggregate. Mitch, 17-2 was the aggregate of the...
Was it 17-2? Was it? Jesus.
7 games over a couple of years.
Before I try to
catch 17 this season.
No. Before I try to catch the lads out tonight, a couple of birthdays today. I always like to do these on the Retro Show if there's any. Pat Hurd.
Wow.
And look at his blue star, Stu.
Touches the black, isn't it?
It's a Joe Allen blue star.
It's a Joe Allen, so he was a real...
Yeah,
Pat Hurd didn't really do it at Newcastle. Joins a long list. This lad, who a lot of people think we should have kept...
Fraser Foster.
Fraser Foster.
He was a good goalkeeper, wasn't he?
He didn't have
a good goalkeeper.
Yeah, he was. Good that he's up, because I did want to show you this. Somebody sent us a photograph in. See if you can tell us who this goalkeeper is, lads.
Jeremy. It's not you, George, is it?
No.
Is that Super Mac?
Good shout, Neil Mitchell. Well done, son. Super Mac in goal for Fulham.
In goal.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, there you go.
Wow.
Not sure what the context was or why he was doing it. Maybe he was training or whatever. I will do. Yeah, I'm going to find out tomorrow. But thanks everybody for sending whoever that was who sent it in. We didn't find out who it was, but great picture to send in. We'll
tell you what. I don't know about you guys, but you see that picture of Fraser Foster, and then you look at his record and in his career that he had, or he's had, and I just see Freddie Woodman. I just see Newcastle United.
Exactly.
We've got to manage him carefully. The difference with him, though, Steve, was we had him and Krull at the same time. Yeah. And I was watching a lot of the reserves and under 18s at that time, and it was a Rizzler paper between him and Tim Krull, and I think the difference between the two of them was their footwork, and that was why Foster got let go. That was seen as the difference between the two of them, I believe, because there wasn't room for both of them.
No,
with the goalkeeping squad that we had at the time, and they had to make a decision about one or the other. And I think they believed that Foster didn't have the footwork.
Can't keep them all happy, goalkeepers. That's the problem. That's right. Can only pick one, really, and it's always a gamble. Somebody had this on Twitter as well. I can't remember who it was, but what a great photo that was, lads.
Oh, yeah.
Cool. Fantastic, yeah.
Yeah.
Bit of history that the old West Stand and the floodlights at the far end, but yeah, lovely shot that. Whoever.
I mean, you used to play in snow like that. You used to bank it up on the side and get
On a Saturday morning,
Saturday
I
morning.
was just about to say, Steve, hated playing just after.
I've sat on straw at the side of the pitch in the games that were you would have been called off. On the cinder track.
The cinder track round the outside used to freeze, and if you got tackled and pushed off the grass, you slid on the cinder track. Oh, it was nasty. It was horrible. I remember
didn't it?
I remember doing it to somebody called O'Hara from Everton, and that's the occasion when Jimmy Schooler said to my dad's hearing, he's a nasty little sod, and I put young O'Hara on the cinder track on his face in the snow. So it wasn't very nice, but a good tackle, I promise.
Makes ball shape with hands.
Okay, we're getting to that part of the show where we pick out faces that played for both teams. So pretty easy this one this week for you lads. It's the celebrity ones that might trip you up, but here we go. Wrong picture. Where are we? There we go.
Big Ramona.
Yes, Tom Dixon mentioned him in the chat. Big Ramona, yes. Didn't quite do it at Newcastle, but bit of a legend down those parts.
Yeah. Mickey Quinn.
McQuinn.
Alan Armstrong.
Adam
Armstrong, yeah.
Leon Best.
Kevin Gallagher?
Kevin Gallagher, yeah.
Yeah.
Darren Huckabee.
Darren Huckabee.
Killer.
Kill Klein.
Good photo of that. And somebody who sat on the bench for Newcastle and for Coventry.
Ian
Dowie.
Ian Dowie, of course, Alan Shearer's assistant when he took over Newcastle to try and keep them up. And just for those of you wondering what we're talking about with regards to Shea Given, that's the best photo I can get of that particular incident. It is available on YouTube, of course, where Dion Dublin comes back on the pitch as Shea Given's about to kick the ball and then rightly takes it past and rolls it into the net. As Paul Oxley rightly said at the start of the show, the only Irishman who didn't know where Dublin was. So very funny. So we're going to come to this part of the show where we have celebrity fans. This obviously is due to research on the internet, so some of these people I'm sure are fans and some maybe not. Some maybe went to a game and were...
I hope you haven't got our friend on, Steve.
There's a few on. There is quite a few of these. Sometimes you struggle with these, but here's your first one.
That's The Enemy.
That's The Enemy, of course.
The Enemy,
band. Well done.
Top group, yeah. David Moorcroft,
the runner.
All right.
Oh, Paul King.
Yeah.
Paul King.
Oh, the journalist.
Shock jock, isn't he?
Yeah, shock jock, yeah.
He got the Talk Sport at one point.
Joe Gaunt.
John Gaunt. John Gaunt, yeah. Well done, lads.
Way.
Very hard.
Gorilla gloves.
Nobody said tell us his name.
I had to put him on, lads. I had to put him on.
You didn't.
Vince Hill.
There you go.
Singer.
Yeah.
Something for everybody today, Vince Hill.
Oh, that's the MP, the one that was Maggie Thatcher, the boss of Jaguar, who Maggie Thatcher made a night because he donated lots of money to them. Jeffrey
Robinson.
And
Jeffrey Robinson,
and he let her down by going from London to Birmingham in his Jaguar at about 150 mile an hour, and then trying to get somebody else to take the points in court. So his knighthood didn't last very long.
That's one of the two-tone guys, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, but it's not one of the specials. It's somebody else, isn't it?
Yeah.
Neville someone, but I can't remember his surname.
Neville Staples.
Well done. Hey, good teamwork, lads. Hey, you're flying
Well done,
tonight.
lads.
Graham Hawley.
Well
Bloody
done,
hell.
Graham Hawley. Coronation Street villain, of
Coronation
course.
Street.
Easier one, this.
Oh,
McGowan, Alistair McGowan.
McGowan.
Arsenal going, yeah.
Alistair McCowan, yeah. He used to watch the Sky Blues at Highfield Road and had a season ticket. He does now, of course, support Arsenal.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Sports commentator.
Not quite, Steve, but you're getting warm.
Not a commentator.
No.
No.
I'm just still thinking, can we borrow those MP's points for this season?
Is it Andy Good? No.
It's not Andy Good.
He looks like a rugby coach or something.
I think it is.
Steve was on the right track.
He's a
He is-
sports presenter, isn't he?
Yeah.
What, like
He is-
Sky Sports News reporter or something like that?
Sky News, yeah.
Nah.
Steve Beaton. No.
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 I think I've got you beaten.
I think you have.
Ian Woods from Sky.
Yeah,
Sky News journalist. He's Sky News. George should get this.
Oh, that's the Labour man, Bob Ainsworth.
Bob
Defence
Ainsworth. Former Shadow Defence Secretary Bob Ainsworth, yeah. He's
couldn't remember how many nuclear warheads we had, so he didn't last very long.
No, it's often the case with politicians. Bit of an easy one, this one, lads. I told you there's a few of these mine tonight.
Brian McFadden.
Brian McFadden.
Brian McFadden, long-time fan of the Sky Blues.
Tell by the suit, can't you? Aye? Yeah.
He actually described his first #1 single with Westlife as comparable to watching Coventry lift the FA Cup.
Aye.
There you go.
This isn't Huggy Bear.
Oh, man, Scottish singer. B. Robertson.
B.A. Robertson.
Yeah, Robertson, yeah.
Gear up.
What a pair of trousers.
Well,
It's fantastic. How the hell does he support Coventry?
I've got no idea, but what...
He used to play football when he was younger. He was a bit of a flair player.
Hey! I love the...
Mitch
He'd like to
will
have a few spats on... He'd like to have a few spats on the touchline as well. Hey!
Mitch, we'll sign him up for our darts team, eh?
And there's another one for the darts team there, aye? We are. The idea who he is, though. Nah.
Never Sample.
No. That's Steve Hine. Nickname,
Steve Hine, yeah.
Nickname is the Muffin Man.
Yeah.
Is it now? Oh, 200-metre guy.
Marlon Devonish.
Yes.
Marlon Devonish, of
Marlon
course.
Devonish.
Marlon, yeah.
The runner. This one was a surprise to me.
Dean Richards.
Dean Richards, the Falcons, yeah.
And last but by no means least, got to get a woman in there. It did struggle to find one, but we got one in the end. There was a couple.
Lucy Rose.
Lucy Rose, the musician, is a big Coventry fan, apparently. So you learn something every day. Well done, lads. You did quite well. I did manage to get you on a couple, which is good. Keeping me record going. Just a few couple of people in there in the chat got a few of those right that you didn't. So well done to them. And Keith Rose says, it's a shame Newcastle's outfield players aren't as good as the goalkeepers. Newcastle have 3 good goalkeepers and I struggle to name 3 good outfield players at a time. Paul Oxley reckons as well, if we go down, Woodman will be our #1 in the championship. So plenty of stuff being said in the chat. Thanks everybody for joining in. As I said at the start of the show, we are going to do Birmingham next week. So you've got 7 days to get your head around that, lads. And I know that some of you have already got some good stories with that anyway. But Steve, as always, yeah, go on.
We've been talking about all those fantastic goalkeepers from Fraser Foster, Tim Krul, all the way up to the current ones. And the man who needs the pat on the back is a little grey-haired guy that warms them up on St James's when we've got a match. Simon Smith is the goalkeeping coach. Aye. And he he makes all those lads. He's the goalkeeper coach, and he's responsible for all of those lads, one way or another.
It has
Good
been
stuff.
a long time.
Yeah, good
Yeah.
stuff. He did come back to the club, didn't he? He went away and
Yeah.
then came back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff. Excellent, lads. We'll look forward to seeing you next week. And, of course, I will see Mitch and Steve Hasty on Friday night at 5:30 for the Three Amigos. But you have a good week, lads. I'll see you next Wednesday. Take care.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers all.
Cheerio, everybody. Ta-da.
Head back with your critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're